Joining me now is Democratic Congressman Gregory Meeks of New York. He's chair of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Congressman, thanks for joining me on the show this evening. Joe Biden yesterday announced a bunch of new military aid to Ukraine, but still no movement at all on the administration's decision not to send Polish fighter jets to Ukraine, something Biden dodged a question on, too. Do you think that is something that can be done, the United States itself sending the jets to Ukraine, without it being seen as an overt escalation by Moscow?
No, I think that's the big issue. Number one, that you don't want to create and start World War III. And I think that what President Zelensky said yesterday is, and I think might be a better alternative anyways, and that was getting the S-300s in as opposed to the fighter jets, which in fact, they can then have a no-fly zone themselves. And the S-300s, because the whole key here is to having the equipment that can go higher in the sky, that can reach planes to knock down some of the jets, Russian jets. And just with the jets, there might be a situation where Russia's watching too, and they're easy to knock down those jets. That's another reason why it can't come from us. But with the S-300s, they have the ability to go high to knock out Russian jets, but also they can hit missiles that are attacked, that are dropped to hit Ukraine. And so the S-300s, as well as the drones, especially the drones that are armed, I think is what Russia is afraid of, and can help maybe secure some of the skies for Ukraine.
And Congressman, this war has really become a defining event for our geopolitics, and we're seeing some odd, perhaps controversial realignments, maybe talk in D.C. of easing sanctions on Venezuela, and even talk of removing the Iranian Revolutionary Guards from the terrorism list. You are chair of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Do we have to rethink our foreign policy and who we call our friends or our enemies at a moment like this?
Well, I think that what you find that President Biden has done, and from the time that he stepped in, is trying to talk to folks and talk, openly to everyone in that regards, so we can determine who are our friends and who, understands about democratic society and democratic governments, and as opposed to, autocrats. And so we'll see what's taking place there. I've long have thought, and I tell you that when you talk about Venezuela, the opposition groups in Venezuela wanted Maduro to get back at the negotiating table. And what President Biden has talked about is to get them back at the negotiating table. And some of the conversations they've been having does just that, so that we could try to get a democracy moving and thriving in Venezuela, which has not been there for a long time. So so he's trying to do two things. Oil is part of it, but making sure that we get our prisoners out of Venezuela, as well as having a democratic society and elections in Venezuela.
And on that broader note of realignment, what do you expect Joe Biden will say to Xi Jinping tomorrow? Can China be persuaded not to overtly back Russia on this, not to help them financially? Because it's one thing isolating Russia. Not sure we can isolate China, can we?
Well, I think that China is watching very carefully, and they can see how Biden has unified, for example, all of NATO, all of the EU, all of the G7 nations. He's unified Japan and South Korea and Canada. So all of the major economic powers of the world, democratic countries, are all united together and have put on sanctions on Russia. And so I think Biden will let them know, and I think Xi is very concerned about secondary sanctions if, in fact, they do anything to cooperate with Russia. And that's, I think, going to be a huge deterrent, and something that President Biden will stress in his conversation with Xi on tomorrow.
President Biden, Congressman, had these very strong words for Vladimir Putin yesterday. Have a listen. Look, most people would say, hey, if the shoe fits and Putin has clearly committed war crimes, fair enough, not just in Ukraine, by the way, but in Syria too. I have to ask, though, is that a helpful thing? It might be a true thing to say, but is it a helpful thing for an American president to say out loud, given Putin's the guy we're going to have to eventually do a deal with if we're going to end this war? And shouldn't we be giving him an off-ramp rather than maybe antagonizing him, boxing him further into a corner, calling him a war criminal?
Well, we've tried to give him off-ramps time and time again. I can say, for me, who's generally, I'm not one to go out first for war. but the United States, Joe Biden, our State Department, has done everything on a continuous basis to give him an off-ramp. And so now it's not, and he's chosen not to take it. And so now there's negotiations at times with President Zelensky in Ukraine. And I think that's who should be, not the United States is not going to be a part of that. That's the Ukraine's decision to negotiate. But I do think that ultimately, and this is just Greg Meeks talking now, Vladimir Putin is a war crime, a war criminal, and I think he's going to have to be held accountable for his actions. Yeah. There's no question in my mind about that.
On that note, and I'm all for accountability, we were talking about it earlier in the show, clearly Vladimir Putin has committed war crimes. You've said in the past, no question he's committed war crimes because he's killed women and children, he's bombed civilian targets. I just wonder, though, Congressman, I have to ask, wouldn't it help the United States and make our foreign policy more credible if we could also just as clearly condemn war crimes when committed by our allies too, say Saudi Arabia, in Yemen, or Israel, in Gaza? Why not be consistent in calling out war crimes around the world?
Well, I think that you see members of Congress, myself included, we do call it out. And we do talk to our allies. You know, I know in discussions that I sit down with allies, I let them know that when I see them doing things that are, well, you know, that's annihilating and killing innocent men, women, and children, we don't let it slide by. When I make decisions now as chair of this committee to determine who gets what as far as some of the weapons are concerned, I take all of that into consideration. And those that are utilizing weapons to kill innocent men, women, and children, I don't sign off on them. That's what I think that we need to do, and I think that's what's happening under the Biden administration and under the administration.
I mean, with respect, Congressman, I haven't heard the President of the United States refer to MBS as a war criminal in the way that he's referred to Putin in that way.
Well, I do think that when I see what's taking place, I don't compare exactly what's taking place in Russia and what is taking place in Yemen. I have problems with what's taking place in Yemen, absolutely. But I don't think I think it's comparing apples to oranges in that regard. And I think that we need to call that out, as we did with Saudi Arabia with the killing of the reporter,
Mr. Khashoggi.
That's right. And so I don't equate the two, but I do think that we need to call out allies if they're doing wrong, just as others. But what I see taking place right now in Ukraine is similar to what took place in 1939 in Germany.
Congressman, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time tonight. I appreciate it. Hi, I'm Mehdi Hasan. Thanks for checking out our channel on YouTube. You can see more of The Mehdi Hasan Show by clicking on any of the videos on this screen, and make sure you subscribe below to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. Thank you for watching.